Okay, so I was doing some thinking about the nature of advantages and disadvantages with regards to GURPS and how you can convert that over to Mekton. And the real question of what sort of things do you want to convert? And one of the things that Mekton doesn't do particularly well that is covered kind of in depth with GURPS is reactions. It seems that almost every other advantage or disadvantage has some kind of reaction base to it. There are attraction-based ones, there are poverty or status-based ones, and in many regards I think that reactions are a default interesting way of dealing with character interaction with NPCs, but I often feel that it results in a very role-based, ROLL-based role-playing, that the game master's almost beholden to what they've rolled on the dice. And yes, of course, people can simply say, well, the game master can just decide this is how this person's going to react or not. But if you have a plus or minus an advantage disadvantage system, there's no real. It implies that you should be using the dice to evaluate it, not simply say, oh, the person's probably going to have a good reaction or the person's probably not. In which case, why roll dice at all? Why not just have like a set number that everyone reacts neutrally and then you adjust it up or down based off of that? The other thing that I was thinking about that GURPS does, which I find a little irritating, is I like the idea of how they do their disadvantages. That the player basically has a disadvantage, and if they don't roleplay it, then they take a penalty. And they can fight against it and all that stuff. But still, there's a roll that you make, and you either succeed or you fail, and sometimes you have to do something that you may not want to do simply because it's a disadvantage as a part of your character. And I like that idea. I've run into players who don't particularly like the idea that a player will be told what to do by the game. And I see it as a counteract. Like you're saying, okay, well, I'm taking this disadvantage, therefore I'm getting an advantage, so I should... So there's a mechanism in the game that allows me to balance this out. Now, another thing I don't like... anyway, so what I was going to get to about advantages and disadvantages that I don't particularly like is that, for instance, when you make a die roll for enemies, they show up for that mission. To me, as a game master, that seems too interfering. It seems like you're interfering too much in the play of the game. That is, you're basically saying this is going to happen or this is not going to happen. And in the middle of, yes, of course, the game master can say, oh, this doesn't make any sense, the person won't show up. But if you do that too often, then it starts to rob the game of the sense of what is the point of this group showing up or not. I would say that they would have to... If you include an enemy as a disadvantage, you have to speak very carefully with the game master about making sure that it fits in with their game plans, and then the game master can then integrate that particular enemy group, or the game master essentially decides the enemy for you. You basically pick the general parameters and they decide the characteristics of that enemy. And yeah, I think that would be the best way of dealing with it. I guess I just don't like the idea of something being completely player-driven, that something that the game master is supposed to do is instead being driven by the players. It sounds worse than what I'm trying to say. What I'm trying to say is that the players should be involved with it, but their general random die rolls should not dictate to the game master what the flow of a game should be. And like I said before, if you simply say, well, I'm not going to use that in this particular mission because it doesn't make any sense, if you do that a lot of times, then it eventually doesn't make any sense at all. And you should almost make extra rolls, or you make a roll every single time, and if it doesn't show up this one, it will have to show up the next time there's an opportunity. That sort of thing. Anyway, my thoughts about GURPS advantages and disadvantages, specifically reaction rules and enemies. More to come.